For the three thematic areas, one of the takeaways for the network and the members is that there is so much that is happening. And so much that is happening that sometimes it does not require resources to implement. It does not require resources to have consultations internally with the congregation, to have consultations internally in an organization about gender justice. What it takes is the will to do it. It does not take resources to have consultations and discussions around peace building. The issue of coexistence between religions. Those are discussions that can take place without necessarily requiring resources. What I want to appeal to the members to do is to make sure that at least somebody takes something home, whether it is on sexual reproductive health, whether it is on gender justice, whether it is on peace building and peaceful coexistence, that one can start in a small way back home, back in their own organizations, to enable that movement to grow and to expand that particular experience and that particular knowledge, and use the evidence that has been gathered in the different spaces where the different sessions they have attended, to be able to initiate something back home that can benefit the members who have not come together here, the ones that were left behind in the different organizations and the different congregations and the different countries, so that they all can benefit from the fact that an ambassador for them was in this particular convention. Because that's how I look at it. Because we could not bring, of course, the entire organization, members of the staff or members of that organization, all the faith groups that are in different countries. We brought some few, and those few are ambassadors for the rest. So they need to take back to them what they have gained, go share with them, and then they can start implementing at their own level.
Welcome. Let's try this. Can you hear me in the back? Welcome. Welcome, welcome. What a wonderful convention this has been. I know I'm not the only one who has had just such a wonderful, wonderful few days. So we have three main parts to our closing plenary today. The first part, we are honored to have a panel discussion with some very distinguished guests and friends, with questions and answers between me and the panelists, whom I will introduce in a minute. The second part will be the reading of the Convention Interfaith Statement. And for that, we will recognize the drafting committee, and the Convention Interfaith Statement will be read out. My understanding is that everyone will get a printed copy of the Interfaith Statement on your table so that you can also read it as well as hear it. And then the third part of the closing plenary is the closing ceremony, which will include interfaith prayers, cake, and a candle lighting ceremony. The theme of this conference is diversity inclusion, from rhetoric to collective faith action. Let's unpack this theme. Dr. Nontando Hadebe, diversity inclusion. What does it mean for you in your work for gender equality?
Thank you very much for the participation in this panel. Thank you to everyone for just being here together. You know, when I think about diversity, I mean, just looking at all of you, that is diversity. If you just looked around, that is diversity. It's all about difference, the reality of difference. We see it in nature, we see it everywhere. But the problem when it comes to diversity is, how do we construct difference? How do we understand difference? Many times difference always means a threat, or it can mean a source of fear. And we see how our world has been destroyed by the way in which difference is constructed as inequality We see that in racism. We see that when different races are constructed as inequality. We see that in gender. The beautiful differences between male and female is constructed as inequality. We see that between so-called able-bodied people and those that are differently abled. We see all this kind of challenges that come when we do not appreciate the gift of diversity. And even when we come to talk about gender, it's also important to remember that there is no homogeneous woman. There's no ideal woman. Women are different. In any cross section of women, you find that women we've got women with disabilities, women with different classes, race, ethnicity. And so when we are doing gender, we need to acknowledge that difference so that no one is left behind. So diversity is almost a conscientizing thing that we need to be conscious whenever we are whenever we are talking about women, whenever we are talking about men. We need to have diversity at the back of our minds to know that there's no one man, there's no one ideal woman, or in all of those categories are diversity. And when we don't acknowledge diversity, there's exclusion. Exclusion is something that leads to violence. It's like some people are excluded from the table. So we need to be asking ourselves, who is excluded here? Who is excluded in our programs? So that nobody should be excluded. We should make inclusion a culture. Everyone included, no one excluded, and people speaking for themselves. Nothing about anybody without their presence. So diversity and inclusion are critical in our work in order to push back the whole understanding, the whole functioning of the world where diversity is not accepted as a gift, is not allowed to thrive, is not allowed to exist. So for me personally, I ask myself in my diversity work, how many women with disabilities are on the table? How many women with different sexualities or ethnic groups? Who is missing on the table? Those are the questions that we need to be asking whenever we categorize the work that we're doing. We're doing work among women, we're doing work among men, or this ethnic group. We need to realize that we cannot contain the human experience in one overview. And so we are saying that nobody excluded, nothing about anybody without their presence, and that all of us our voices need to be there. We need to create welcoming spaces for all differences to say, no matter who you are welcome here. Different religions, even within the religions, even the differences. Let's not feed into the polarization that divides people. Let's not be agents of division, but rather of inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you for that beautiful answer. Judge Sumud Al-Damiri, diversity and inclusion. What does it have to do with the judiciary system?
Yes, I will try to answer in English as I can. If I need any help, I will ask our friend to help me. But the first, thanks to the Act to Faith, Faith to Action Network, and our colleagues from the Lutheran Church in Palestine, because they now I have a strong and gentle kind opportunity to be here with you. It's very important to me. Why it is strong? It is strong because it adds to me in every session I was in it through these 3 days. Because in our perspective, Sharia perspective, that today shouldn't be like yesterday. Every day we should add to ourselves. It's very important to us. And you add to me in this workshop and in this conference. It is very important to me. Why it is gentle? Because the sessions nourished soul, not just mind. And it's very important to me also. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I try from yesterday when Matthias told me about the details of this session to address the diversity and the inclusion in my work. Because in Palestine, we have another model of judiciary system. And we have a majority of Muslim in Palestine. It's around 98%. Maybe the Christian and the Palestinian Jewish less more 2%. So diversity, the meaning of diversity, I don't see it in the policies. I don't see it in the plans, in the strategies. So I try to look to the term of diversity in the Constitution, in our life, in our practices. When I check the atmosphere of the Sharia courts, look, to be a judge in the Sharia courts, it must be a Muslim judge. But you can be a Christian employee inside the Sharia courts. But the question is, when we announce for any job inside the Sharia courts, no Christian come to apply to this job. And the question is why? Because they live a fear in their mind. Not because of the legal obligation at the end. Okay? But in the same time, the Sharia judges play a very important role. They have double identity as a religious leader and as a judges. So they are in our society as the messengers for a peace, as the messengers for a civil peace, and we work together with the Christians, with the Sumerian, between the brackets, Sumerian is a Palestinian Jewish in the north of Palestine. And they sit all the time on the same table and have the same national discourse for every matter and every issue. And we can see that. But at the same time, we have a very nice experience in the Sharia courts that we are responsible about the Sharia lawyers. We have a special committee, and the head of the Sharia courts are the head of this committee. And and the law, any Christian or any Jew can have a license to be a judge in front of the Sharia courts, like Judge Scarlett. So if he qualified, can be a lawyer in front of Sharia courts. So the criteria to be a lawyer in front of Sharia law courts, it's not just to be a Muslim. You can be a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew. So we have a nice experience. Nowadays, I put this experience under the addresses of diversity and inclusion. And when I return back to my country, I will say my chief and my colleagues about how we can address our practices and how we can reflect what I learned in these 3 days in our policies in the future, because we have also a strong interfaith between the religious leaders in Palestine because of the situation of the Holy Land. It's clear to the people or unaware. But to look to our structures, to look to our legislation with a link with our discourse in the same time with the religious leaders is very important. That's how I can understand now, after your conference, the diversity and inclusion. Thank you very much.
Judge Sumud, from your experience, what's the biggest challenge in engaging faith actors to promote gender justice?
A very big question. That's why we are here. This is the answer. This principle or these terms to understand it or to include it or to put it inside the discussion with the religious leaders, it's not easy, because the cultural background and the interpretations of the religious, maybe the Holy Quran and the Sunnah and the Bible. We have maybe, for example, in Palestine, a cultural background, and we have in our Islamic interpretation, a lot of areas have holy covers by the time. So because of that, to ask them to sit on the same table and to discuss it again, it's not easy. And many times they ask us not to discuss with these issues, or not to open the discussion with these issues, because all of us must save the civil peace. They sometimes feel that we will threaten the civil peace if we open the discussion about many issues or many matters inside our society. Because of that, the culture of any community, any people, for the religious leaders, is very important to understand it, to analyze it. After that, to have a scientific tool, and to discuss them after that, and to build a trust with them, because to discuss them in these issues, it's not easy, and they will, and many times feel that they are in danger or under a threat. That's, I think, with my work, when I start my work inside the Sharia courts, it wasn't easy to accept the females as the judges inside the Sharia courts. Nowadays, it's very easy after 12 years. Now, it's easy for the other females to follow us, and it's a peaceful environment. But when we start at 2009 or 2010, it wasn't easy for the local communities and for our colleagues, because, for the 14th century, the Sharia courts without women, without females inside Palestine or inside the regions. So because of that, sometimes we have to open the dialogue for some interpretation, to clarify it, to open the dialogue, to open the discussion with them, and also to create a scientific tools also to open the dialogue with them. Not always a discussion just for discussion. It's not be useful all the time. And that to translation of the Sharia or the Holy Book or the Bible is very important to work in it in the future. I believe in that, because if we open this door to find a solution from the Sharia, not out of the Sharia, we can't find it. Why not? So if we tell them that we can find a solution from the Sharia, so they will never feel under threat. So maybe also to find a new solution with a new interpretation from the Sharia, it will be good, useful for the future to progress, to have a progress.
Thank you very much. Dr. Nontando, from your experience, what's the biggest challenge in engaging faith actors to advocate for women's rights, including reproductive health?
Thank you very much. I think one of the biggest challenge is the way in which sexual and reproductive rights have been politicized, particularly in other parts of the world. The church religion is a global, it's a global entity. So what happens in another part of the world influences. And so we see, for example, in the United States, that this is such a big issue that has divided Christians. And so it doesn't stay there. It comes to Africa, and it comes with money. And so you find that conversation that did not come from the African context is imposed. And suddenly the agenda, which is precisely to associate sexual and reproductive rights with abortion, just limits to that. And then, so you have these conspiracy theories that come with that argumentation, and those fall onto African soil with the dollar and pushes an agenda that really does make this difficult. So that, I think, is something that we need to put into the equation. And then secondly, the whole issue of sexuality. We have not grasped the issue of sexuality in our faith. We cannot even combine spirituality and sexuality. To be holy means you don't do sex. So you can even imagine that if you raise any issue that has to do with sexuality, then we're still grappling with that. And so even when you go even deeper into the history, women are associated with sexuality. So you find even interpretation of the creation story is that, Eve is the one who seduced Adam. Even though he was present there, he has got his own brain. So the woman is constructed as the one who is through using her sexuality. So the whole issue of sexuality, anything to do with sexuality, we saw that in the struggle against HIV and AIDS. We are seeing this in this conversation. And when you put that mix with women, you just have this combination that makes it very, very difficult to be able to talk through that. And so you have that. And also the other point is the vilification of African culture. So when Christianity came, it was like, this is rubbish. This is something that we can't get anything. So, but one of the things that went down is the fact that African culture developed a strategy for each stage of life. So when you were a teenager, there was a process to teach you about sexuality, to prepare you as an adult. But what do we have? We haven't filled that gap as Christians. We in some of our churches. So, and the way in which we talk about sexuality is so negative. Don't do this, don't do that type of thing. And even the voices of the youth are not integrated in the sexuality. And even more in Christianity, maybe my faith, that the language for God is masculine. We always talk about God as he. It's a masculine language. And in the Catholic Church, it's even made even more masculine because Jesus was male. So the argument is that because Jesus was male, and therefore you can't be a priest. So you find the masculinization, the language of maleness that is so intrinsic in our faith is what is the greatest form of violence, the exclusion of women from the image of God. Even though in Genesis it says they were created in the image of God. And then they just put a full stop. And when you try to say, but what is the implication? Here is God saying, I want to reveal who I am. Out comes woman, out comes male. But to make that association that the fact that women are made in the image of God, it means that in the God self is the female. You. If you even say she, you. It is so entrenched that it's unimaginable. And we need to know that every week. Masculinization of God, maleness of God. And this creates a culture where people resist even to say she who is. My goodness, if they could stone you, they would. So one of those things, it's so entrenched that even if we deal with this changing of theological concepts, unless it goes to the deep stuff, then we're still going to be cosmetic. Thank you.
Men trembling in this room.
Yeah, the rule of the language.
Yes, yeah. Great idea. Just Samud.
Yes.
Tell us your personal experience.
First, I will steal some words from my brother from Indonesia about the rule of the language. He is very impressive. For example, uniting in diversity. And the COVID-19 without religion. It's the way how you use the statement, the words to change. It's very important because the language, especially the Arabic language, reminds us all the time that we are male and female. This is our language. So how we can find ourselves as a human inside this language, we have to analyze also the language in the same time and the using of the language. When he said diversity, unity and diversity, he spread the peace in all our hearts. This is very important to check the rule of the language, and maybe we can we can work together in the future about that. Related to your question. Yes, after when I check, yes, we have built diversity in our work as a judges inside the Sharia court as employees, but in the same time, we have a national bodies and Christians or Jewish, but most of them are Christian, are our colleagues in these national committees or national bodies at the same time. So to say, we are all of us under law across the religious, but because we are from many backgrounds, when we discuss, we can find the solution. And my colleague, like Scarlett, when we discuss together, because we are from the same culture in Palestine, we can find the solution. For mixed marriage, for example, it's a very clever way to find a solution that I have to hear, to listen well. After that, to look to her eyes and to understand her emotions, her appearance about all issues in her society. And she is the same. And we work together to find a solution. This is the soul of the diversity when we are in the same table, in the same national bodies, and in the same national committees. For example, I am a member in the CEDAW committee, but I ask the Minister of Women Affairs to join us, our colleagues from the churches, because it's very important, because they aren't as escorted as the judges with us inside these committees, and it's very important to listen to their voice on the table, because it's not allowed to us to express about their needs. That's the meaning of diversity, to allow to them to talk about their needs. It's important, and to put their needs on the table. Because of that, also I was a member in the legal aid strategy. When we check the legal aid strategy in Palestine, we didn't find the Christian females. And we worked together, Scarlett and me, and to open this to the citizenship, that it's a right to the Christian females inside Palestine to have like these services. And we succeed at the end. This is what we try to do inside Palestine, because the sects, unfortunately, live in isolation. Imagine that. Every sect lives in their church, in their church, they live in their church, they protect themselves like a local communities, and they try all the time to solve their problems with themselves, not to share their needs, not to share their problems with with the neighbors, for example. We haven't any disputes as the Muslims or as the Christians in the Palestine together, but at the same time, we need to share our needs, our emotions, our problems together. It's important. We have positive actions, and we have at the same time negative action to isolate the people out of the services, to let them live alone. It's a negative action, because our responsibility to put all the females, all the people on the same table, because we live, as my brothers from Indonesia said, in the same land. It is important to understand that we live in the same land. Because of that, we have to try to find what is a link between us, that it's a unity. Not to look all the time that we have to be afraid because we have here maybe a threat net or not. That's why we have to be together and to share our emotions and our dreams at the end, because we are one in humanity. That's why.
Thank you. It also reminded me of an expression by the Reverend Jesse Jackson in the U.S. civil rights struggle for African Americans.
Yes.
To help people feel, when you say we must listen to each person at the table, he had an expression, he would go in rallies around the country saying to African American young people, I am somebody. I am somebody.
Yes.
And get the crowds to chant that so they can believe and feel their worth.
Yes, that's what I see all the time when they start to work with us as a majority on the same table. They were many times conservative, to share their attitude.
Shy.
And not shy, they are conservative. It's not usual situation to share their needs, their emotions, how they think about personal status issues, for example, the services, for example, how they can face the problem in their communities, for example. They feel that they are minority inside. The term of minority, it's not just we can see it in the convention, word convention, or in the constitution. We can see it as attitude, as a culture. Imagine that. We told them that you are a citizenship. They feel all the time that we are a majority and they are a minority. And imagine that. So you can see that it's attitude, not just a present under articles or under legislation.
Thank you. Dr. Nantando, what is your personal experience in taking action from rhetoric to collective action?
I think personally for me, it has been studying theology because I know from Christian history and it's as if women didn't exist. They were like erased. When you study church history, you find that there are very few women that are mentioned. So studying theology for me was my way of contributing to a conscientization for correcting the gaps that are there in our theological thinking. You know, for example, I always would, and then passing that on to women so that they themselves, when they look at the same text, that, you know, these texts that are flagged to women, submit, you know, creation, you cause sin. But when they see that there is more, there's much more for them. For example, the greatest events in the history of Christianity could not have happened without women. Women, you know, were right there in Exodus, in making sure that that liberation struggle happens. Women were right there right now, you know, with Christmas, to make sure it was their sacrifices that set, you know, the mission of Jesus. And right there at Pentecost, you know, women were present. So to be able to shift the thinking of women's with evidence, with studying, with going deep into studying, and therefore even working as a group with women theologians, the Circle of African Women Theologians, that already disrupts the narrative. Because most of the time when theology is being done, you know, the two sources are usually tradition and scripture. But liberation theology adds the experiences of women. So for us, the stories of women are the source of theology. Those that have been excluded become the source of theology. The way they've experienced, whether it's violence, whether it's exclusion, becomes the topic. It becomes integrated in our theology so that we make the faith what is supposed to be a liberating faith for women. And so I am passionate, to say the least, about ensuring that message that I feel is at the center of the scriptures about the dignity of women. I'm passionate about the artwork. The artwork doesn't represent reality. What artwork? You know, Luke tells us that in the community of Jesus, there were women. Those women have been erased from history. I've never heard of Joanna. I've never heard of Susanna, erased from history. And we are told even in the Acts at Pentecost that there were women present, but there's no artwork that represents that visually. So that you step into a church and it's all a male representation to give the impression that women were erased, women were not part of anything. So studying theology for me is a contribution to correcting, to upholding, to recognizing the reality. The reality is that women were part of the plan right from the beginning. They represent God. So that from Sunday, women are raised up to that dignity and can go out into the world and spread that dignity in all that they do. So, you know, and so at the Synod on the Family, we as Catholic women, we were not invited because, you know, you're not invited. So you invite yourself. So we invited ourselves at the Synod. We're not invited. And so what we did is that we said the stories, because the stories of women are the source of our theology. We asked women to write the stories about the family. because we knew that celibate men who were never married are going to make decisions about what a family should look like. So we thought, let's do a reality check and tell them in this real world, not in the worlds of, where you're sitting, women get beaten at home. You who are saying that marriage is forever, let's tell you our stories. So we got women to tell their stories, both painful stories, both successful. And then we gave them the book. First, they didn't want to receive the books, but we stood there until we gave all 300 of them the voices of women. And so we intervened there. And then at the Synod on the Youth, we said, youth is like vague. We said, listen to young women. We spoke about reproductive health and we put the book there. This time, actually, they brought the police on us when we brought the book, because it's dangerous stuff. We're about to disrupt, so you need to get the police to stop these wild women. So, but the whole thing is that really the whole thing is not just doing things for the sake of doing it, but saying that something is missing in the world. We are told that the image of God is expressed in the female and male. So when the female is oppressed, the image of God is incomplete. So we're not doing this just for the sake of something or for a program. We are saying that the world itself has been wounded because the female is not raised to the place where it should be.
In the back, are we all sitting here? Can I get a hey from the back? Hey. Okay. Wise words. Judge Samud.
Yes.
What is your call to action and your personal reflections on the convention?
My message, you mean?
Okay.
Not to leave anyone behind us. It's very important. And maybe we can review our own dictionary of our words, because it's important to teach our children and the young the suitable and the correct way of using the language. It's very important because we are a part of the bad way of using a language many, many times without any feeling. Sometimes we use a bad word or a bad statement, and we don't feel that we do that. So it's important also to review our dictionary of our words, and education ourselves and the young people. It's very important. And maybe we have to look about who is like us. It's very important to look forward about anyone who like us, to join to us, to work to us. It's very important in anywhere in the world. Yes.
Wonderful. And Dr. Nontando, please share your reflections and your take-home message, call to action for participants.
I'm standing intentionally because I want to honor the great men and women that are in this room. I sat at your feet. I saw the passion. I heard the great work that you are doing. And I just wanted to stand and honor you. And also to say, an African proverb which says, when spider webs unite, they can pull down a lion. So right here, our receptors of the future, right here, are phenomenal men, women, projects that just need to join, that need to continue, that need to deepen, and that need to be documented. We need to get this in our theology schools so that the new generation of priests can be informed by your experiences and your theology. So I stand before you, my teachers, I sat at your feet. Thank you.
We ask Judge Scarlett Bishara, Evangelical Lutheran Church of Jordan and the Holy Land from Palestine, please come up front and read to us the convention's interfaith statement.
Interfaith Statement on Human Dignity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Nairobi, 9 December 2021. Preface. We, representing 56 faith organizations from 26 countries, have come together in Nairobi, Kenya, from December 7th to 9th, 2021, to imagine a shared future of flourishing harmonies, communities where everybody, regardless of religion, gender, age, culture, ethnicity, race, ability, or any other diminution of diversity, enjoys a dignified life. Our shared vision. We recognize that we all share a common and united vision of human development, where all people have access to justice, peace, health, education, security, and spirituality, even if our approaches and practices may differ towards achieving this vision. Challenges. We note with concern that our common world faces serious challenges and our vision seems to be a distant reality. More so considering the current COVID pandemic, climate change, unequal distribution of resources, and conflict. Too often, our people face violence in their homes and communities. For example, 1 in 3 women aged 15 years and older around the world have been subjected to physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner, non-partner, or both, at least once in their lifetime. Too often, our people, especially young people, are forced to migrate because of abject poverty or violent conflicts. By the end of 2020, 5 million people were forcibly displaced. This represents the highest number available on record. Too often, our people suffer from high mortality of women and children due to complications of pregnancy and childbirth, mostly from preventable or treatable causes. The lack of global solidarity and inadequate management of current COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated injustice and inequality and hugely impact the lives of people. Schools have been closed and people have lost their livelihoods. Our mission. We recall that human dignity and sacredness of life is rooted in our sacred texts. Releasing and protecting human dignity, its fulfillment and well-being is at the heart of our mission. We envision inclusive, diverse, just and peaceful societies. Our religious uphold the values of compassion, respect for each other, equality, and non-discrimination, leading by example, solidarity, interfaith cooperation, and partnership are important ways to achieve this mission. Interfaith statement. We are aware of the important role we play and the influence we have in order to fulfill our rights and responsibilities and protect the human dignity of all people. We recognize that we must make critical choices and informed decisions. We affirm our convictions and diverse societies are a strength that must be cherished and protected. We affirm our common and united vision of human development, where all people have access to justice, peace, health, education, security, and spirituality. We are committed to continue fostering inclusive spaces for all people of our communities, regardless of their religion, gender, age, culture, ethnicity, race, ability, or any other diminution of diversity. We will welcome the other and guide our communities towards the vertices of respect, love, solidarity, and care for our neighbors. We are committed to interfaith action and collaboration in order to increase our understanding of each other, building bridges between different stakeholders to realizing greater impacts. We are committed to seeking constructive solutions to the challenges our communities are facing, such as people's health, especially sexual and reproductive health and rights, mental health and COVID-19, gender and social justice, climate change and peaceful coexistence, and are committed to ending practices that limit the flourishing of our communities. We are committed to reviewing our own laws, policies, attitudes, and practices that enable women and girls access to decision making. We are committed to educating believers so that they may overcome mistrust, prejudice, and dehumanizing ideas about other religious groups. We are committed to promote life-affirming theologies and avoid selective interpretations of sacred texts. We acknowledge the compassionate nature of religion and do not accept the practices that have caused harm in the name of religion. We are committed to promoting alternatives to radical and extremist narratives that are used to fuel discrimination, tensions, mistrusts, and conflicts. We are committed to promoting and protecting the freedom of religion or belief of all individuals. We are committed towards advocating for greater accountability of all stakeholders to their responsibilities and obligations. We are committed to participating in civic spaces and contributing to policy making and implementations. We believe that together we can build strong, harmonious, and flourishing communities where everyone can live a dignified life. We declare our motivation to work with other partners and stakeholders to achieve these goals. Thank you.
So, do you see candles on the tables in front of you?
Yes.
Yeah. Can everyone take a candle and be ready? Candles signify continuity of the momentum, the sharing among us all. By supporting each other, we support a strong network, a strong movement. By lighting each other's candles, our own light does not diminish. So we're going to light these candles in an order. I will start. I will light a candle, and then I will light Dr. Ahmad's candle, and he will light Muhammad's, and he will light Muhammad Khadija's, and then they will go to the, oh, that was the steering council.
On behalf of Faith to Action Network and on behalf of the steering council of the network, which is our board, on behalf of the staff members of the secretariat, I just want to wish all the participants safe journeys as they go back. I want to thank them so much for taking time, finding courage to come to the convention in the midst of travel restrictions, in the midst of the pandemic, but also to ask them to continue taking care, keeping safe, that this pandemic is real, but then also we don't want to have fear and use fear and be controlled by fear when we are engaging. We just want to be sure that we can take care, but then we still can keep life moving on. We want to wish them safe journeys and successful implementation of the different interventions they will start engaging in. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to Faith to Action Network Annual Convention 2021. We are so glad to have hosted delegates from all over the world. We have learned a lot in our 3 thematic focuses, which is SRHR, gender justice and women's rights, and also peaceful coexistence and pluralism. We hope to host you during our Annual Convention 2022 next year. Hope to see you there.